Well, hi, I'm Gene Trowbridge, and our law firm is Trowbridge Taylor, and this is my law partner, Kim Lisa Taylor, and we're here today to talk to you about new things that are happening as a result of the Jobs Act and how it relates to raising money in real estate syndications. We're going to be covering Rule 506C, we're going to be covering the Bad Actors Act, and we're going to be covering crowdfunding. First of all, Kim, I think I'll talk about Rule 506C for just a little bit. As most of you know who are watching this, we've had a prohibition against advertising and soliciting when you're raising money in a Reg D offering for a very long time. As a result of the Jobs Act, that prohibition has gone away, and there's a new rule called 506C, and in 506C what you can do is you can raise as much money as you want from as many accredited investors as you want, and you can advertise and you can solicit for investors. All you have to do is prove that you have taken the steps to be reasonably assured that every one of your investors is accredited. So Kim, when they do a 506 offering, they're not going to be able to take any sophisticated investors in, only accredited investors, that's right?
Not if they want to advertise.
Not if they want to advertise. So if it's
Right.
a 506C, they're going to be limited to taking accredited investors. Now there's all sorts of things about that we'll cover in some other material we'll have for you later. Let's talk about the Jobs Act and how it relates to people called bad actors.
Well, part of the Jobs Act, when the SEC came up with these rules for allowing advertising to accredited investors, they recognized a need to be able to protect investors that were going to be bombarded with new and different opportunities that they hadn't seen before. So one of the things they wanted to do is to make sure that this didn't become kind of a preying ground for people who have been in trouble before for some kind of a financial issue or fraud or misrepresentation. So they included a separate section of the Jobs Act and a new rule. It's called Regulation D, Rule 506, subsection D, like dog. And what that says is that if you have engaged in certain disqualifying events, such as a cease and desist order or some kind of a regulatory disciplinary proceeding or a criminal conviction or a felony related to some financial matter, and that could have been issued either by the SEC, a state regulator, or the court system, if any of those things have occurred, then you won't be allowed to participate in a Rule 506 offering. And that pertains both to the new Rule 506C that you could advertise, and also to the old rule, which we now call Rule 506B, that you can't advertise, the one that allows sophisticated investors. But this bad actor provision will pertain to both those types of offerings in the future. So if anything like that happens to any member, manager, officer, director, or employee of the management group for one of these pooled syndicates or any kind of a securities offering under Regulation D, Rule 506, then they will either be prohibited from participating if the thing occurred after September 23rd, 2013, or if it occurred prior to September 23rd, 2013, and there are some time limits for how far you have to look back, but if it occurred prior to that, then there's mandatory disclosure requirement. So the other interesting thing about the bad actor provision is that it also, in addition to applying to the members, managers, officers, directors, anybody involved with management or promoting or raising money for that deal, it also applies to any investor that has 20% or more of the voting interests in the company. So the person, the promoter and syndicator that's putting that deal together is actually going to have to do some due diligence on their investors to make sure that they don't qualify or aren't disqualified from participating. And if they were, then they would either have to keep them out of the deal or keep them from having a voting provision.
Boy, that's going to be a big change, and our sponsors are going to have to spend some time paying attention to that.
Yes.
And the last thing that's coming out of the Jobs Act is crowdfunding. You've all heard about crowdfunding. We've been talking about it for ages. How are we going to allow money raising to happen on the internet for small deals? And the Jobs Act wrote into a statute the provision to do crowdfunding. And simply what it's going to be is you will be able to raise up to $1 million in a 1-year period of time from small investors. The investors are going to be protected against risk because an investor who has a net income or a net worth of less than $100,000 will be limited in the amount they can invest, and I think the maximum is $5,000. And investors who have more than $100,000 of net worth or annual income will be limited to investing 10% of that net worth or annual limit of income up to a maximum of $100,000. Now that's a lot, but basically what we're talking about is small investors, and a sponsor can raise $1 million from a bunch of small investors to do their deal. What we're really waiting for is the final rules. The final rules on crowdfunding won't be out probably till the first quarter of 2014, don't you think, Kim?
Yeah.
And what was really going to be exciting and something to follow is all of the money has to be raised through something called a funding portal. And a funding portal is basically going to be a variation of a broker-dealer. And so you're going to take your offering, you're going to take it to a funding portal who's going to like your idea, do some due diligence on your project, and then go ahead and put it on their website, and they're going to raise all the money for your deal. And I know, Kim, you think that that's kind of like an MLS or
Yeah, I
something.
think it's going to be more like a multiple listing service for houses for sale, because I think these funding portals are going to list multiple opportunities. You're not going to have a separate funding portal for each deal. You're going to have multiple deals posted on a single funding portal, and that funding portal, whoever's operating that, will have to be approved by the SEC. And you won't be able to do your own money raising for those crowdfunding opportunities. You'll have to do it through this funding portal. So it's limiting.
So that's one thing we're waiting to learn about, is what will the real makeup of the funding portal be. And another thing we're waiting to learn about is, will the regulators put some prohibitions, some disclaimers, some disclosure requirements, some things in your crowdfunding offering to protect the investor public, who we can imagine won't be the most sophisticated investors of all time. So maybe the states and the federal regulators want to put some restrictions on there and protect the investors. So we'll pay attention to that, and we'll always keep you updated on what's happening. Well, now that we've talked about 506C, and we've talked about bad actors, and we've talked about crowdfunding, let's just take a minute, Kim, and talk about how we think all this is going to affect our business and our clients.
I think there's a lot of people out there that are waiting for the final rules on the 506C offerings, so for the additional disclosures and the additional filings and what's going to happen, whether you have to submit your ads in advance to the SEC. I think once those rules are finalized, hopefully by the end of the year, I think we'll have a lot of people that want to do 506C offerings and want to offer those to accredited investors. They'll give them some freedom to advertise, and then they can actually, that is something that they can actually advertise on their own website. So I think that's going to be appealing to a lot of potential clients out there and people who want to raise money in this market.
I think so. And then as far as the bad actors rule, we're going to have to go back to all of our sponsors, all of our previous clients, and alert them to this rule that's brand new, and see if any of them are still raising money on deals, because if you're still in the middle of a deal and you're raising money, now this bad actor applies to you. So we're going to have to do some education on our sponsors on that. What do you think about crowdfunding?
You know, I think it's good for some of the smaller fix and flippers, people who are doing single family stuff. They don't need quite as much money. I think it's going to be problematic for people that are trying to raise money for specified offerings, commercial deals, where they've got a finite period of time that they have to raise the money, because they won't have any control over that money raising process, and they can't actually go out and meet people and get them to invest like they would otherwise if they weren't involved in that type of a transaction.
Good. Well, thank you. Well, we'll continue to keep you updated, and visit our website as often as you can. We'll try to have new information, new articles, new videos to keep you going. And thanks a lot for paying attention.
Thank you.